Damn, I thought he was going to say it's because I was so good looking. Hey, I'm Bonnie, and I'm an alcoholic. I'm glad to be here tonight. Glad to be able to be anywhere. Glad to be able to share with you.
I'll get it out of the way.
That's all right. Yeah, I'm kind of a stander-upper when I'm speaking. I wanted to share today's reading from A New Day. And it goes like this. If the only tool you have is a hammer, you tend to see it, every problem as a nail. And it says, for many years prior to my recovery, in fact for most of my life, I lacked tools for living. I dealt with just about everything on my terms, using guile, hostility, and dishonesty to get what I wanted. Because I'd never learned to understand myself, I felt lost in the world. Because I didn't know how to express my feelings or even how to identify them, I often behaved in ways that further alienated me. The most painful lack was my inability to interact with others. It's difficult to pinpoint exactly when I began learning how to live comfortably. However, at some point, I gained enough humility to become teachable. As I became willing to listen to others and to be honest with myself, I gradually acquired a set of tools for daily living. I learned that I was not at the center of the universe. I could begin to see myself in perspective. I found ways to become more self-aware, to come to terms with the past, to acknowledge and become free of my character defects. All of this became possible only when I made God a part of my life. And the thought for the day is you have a spiritual toolkit to solve all the problems of living. There, that's it. Now y'all can go. That pretty much covers it, to be honest. All right, we talked a little bit about what happened, what it's like, why I got in here and what it's like now. And I can tell you that, as Emerson said, basically, all the living that any one of us does is right up in here. This is where you live. So whatever you're thinking today is how your day went. Whatever you thought about, what you were thinking about when you came in here, like, oh God, I got to have another meeting, I can't wait for this to be over, I hope she hasn't talked too long. All that stuff is your life. That is your life. And, when I first came into this program, I think basically when I look at that, I started drinking when I got married, pretty much. So I wasn't an early drinker. And the reason for that was I felt a really heavy need to take care of myself because I didn't have anybody to take care of me. So I felt this need to kind of watch my own behind, as it were. And I was afraid to drink. So when I got married, and I married a drunk Marine, those two go together. Anyhow, when I married him, I just kind of thought, well, if you can't beat him, join him, and I got started pretty quickly. So at the age of 20, I started drinking, and being a woman, for one thing, women have a tendency to go down the tube faster than men. It really only took me 12 years to be at the bottom of the heap. So I really spent 12 years drinking alcoholically, and a good bit of that is that I am Irish, and we do have a predisposition to alcoholism, and it runs rampant on both sides of our family. I didn't know anything about that. I didn't know anything about my family. The thing being that the other part of that is that I was immersed from childhood in negativity and unhappiness. And so that alcohol that, anesthetized my brain really seemed a very wonderful way to solve the problem of that negativity. Because at least when I first started drinking and I could get high, I felt happy, I felt warm and fuzzy, everything was really, really great. And so I was immersed in alcohol for 12 years. I got sober when I was 32. I have been immersed in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Next March it will be 40 years. So, if you do the math, you can figure out why you didn't want to marry me, okay? But the point being, whatever you immerse yourself in, you become. And that's really true. So this whole, when I talk to you about my drinking, there's very little that I really need to say other than to qualify myself. And number one, just to get up here and tell you that I probably would not be coming here on a Saturday night talking to you and having given up drinking alcohol for 40 damn years if I didn't have a problem with it to start with. Because you know I like to party, those of you who know me, and you know that if alcohol had worked for me, I'd still be out there running the roads. It didn't work for me, it turned on me. I had a real high tolerance for alcohol, which is a dead giveaway to the fact that you probably have a problem. Those of you who were young and thought you could drink well, drink everybody else under the table, oh, God help you. So I just thought, finally, there's something I can do well, and I was still standing when everybody else was laying passed out. And we were Marine drinkers, so you drank till everybody passed out, or, got in a fight with somebody and went home mad, or whatever you did, or tried to find your car out in the parking lot, whatever went on. That was, a good social experience. Okay, that's about the best I can tell you. And as a result, that's how I learned to drink. And it was hold it or lose it, one or the other. And so I learned to hold it, and I did pretty well for about 5 years. Had a lot of fun, did a lot of partying. Dick and I had a lot of fun together, my husband and I, who also, unfortunately, has had this disease. And the point of that was that at about 25, 26, this stuff began to turn on me. Instead of having a high tolerance, instead of being able to remember everything and being able to be the hostess with the mostess, I began to get angry when I drank. That alcohol turned on my ability to be pleasant. I no longer was having so much fun. I thought I was having a good time, but many of you told me on the morning after the night before that I had been a total bitch, and that I had ruined the party, and that I had started something, etc. And I really didn't initially believe that. What had happened, I can remember being, living with Dick, I can remember the fact that I was concerned that he couldn't remember, that he would come home from work and not remember some of the unpleasant things he said before he went to bed that night. And the next morning when he'd get up and I'd confront him, because, I'm also a real good candidate for Al-Anon, since I lived with him before I managed to join up well enough. And so I would lie awake all night thinking about all these things he said to me and how hurt I was and what I was going to say to him in the morning. I couldn't wait for him to wake up. As soon as he woke up, I confronted him about it. No breakfast, just, how could you say this, you SOB? And his thing was total confusion. And like, what? What's the problem? I never said that. Oh, you're exaggerating. I think you're crazy. I never said anything like that. Nothing like that. And I said, Dick, you're not retarded. That happened eight hours ago. I know full well and good you remember what you said. But when it happened to me, and I did not remember the morning after the night before, it frightened me. It frightened me because it gave more people power over me. You could say I did anything, and I didn't know whether it was true or not. So the thing about alcohol for me was when it began to turn on me, I knew that what I wanted above all else was more. And I was a beer drinker because we were poor and young, and I just put it away as much as I possibly could all the time. I thought, let him worry about getting us home. I don't care anymore. The bad news for that was we had a child. After a while, I had a child at the age of 21. So we had a little kid, and it didn't occur to me that in any way, shape, or form, when Dick and I were having our fights at night, which is what happens with two alcoholic Irish people drunk in a fight, it never occurred to me that kid was laying awake listening to that. But indeed he was. So, all of that stuff began to get worse and worse. And I can remember one occasion where Dick and I had gone over to his brother's bar. Now, this is really good when you have a relative that's running a bar, so that was cool. And we went to visit Bill. And finally, I guess I really had too much. We were sipping wine coolers through a straw or some such thing. At least I was. I was trying to be a lady that day. Well, anyhow, I sipped too many too fast or whatever, and next news you know, there were two of my sister-in-law. Now, I liked Bill's brother, but I did not like her. Nobody in the family liked her, and two of her was more than too many. So I decided to quit drinking, and I got up and went into the ladies' room and looked at myself in the mirror, to kind of get my stuff together, and there were two of me. And that really worried me. And I went back out and I said, Dick, I need to go home. So we went, so got in the car and we wandered on home. But as we were driving down, we were staying at my mother's at that point in time, just, we were visiting. Believe me, you didn't stay at my mother's unless you were visiting just for a day or two. Anyhow, we were staying there, he just drove past her house. And I said, that was my house back there. And he's like, oh, I know that. And he pulled up on a couple yards down and rolled down the window because he was going to be sick. And, dogs don't throw up in their own front yard, so Dick didn't want to do that either. So he rolled down the window on his side of the car to throw up. And that looked like the right thing to do to me, so I did that too on the other side. And, I got to tell you that we felt like a family that was doing stuff together. That's kind of how it goes. But when it got a little bad, when it began to turn on me, I was always outside, I was always in the bars, I was always partying, and getting myself into places that I didn't need to be, with people I didn't need to be with, and any time that, Dick wanted to go home, I'd like, go ahead on home, don't let me stop you. So I was one now that I was staying out way beyond where I needed to be, and getting myself into a lot of trouble. And actually, that went against my own morals and my own ethics. It isn't really who I am. But that's something that you just can't live with. I mean, you just keep drinking. And I would wake up in the morning, on the morning after the night before, and I would have vaguely remembered, the night, and be very embarrassed, perhaps. The waking up when you don't know where you've been and what you've done, and you are luckily at home in bed with your husband. That's, a good thing. And then, he's, you don't know whether he's speaking to you or not. And the only thing that you can do is wait for him to wake up and see if he was in a blackout the night before, because if he was in a blackout and you were in a blackout, then we start fresh. But if he wasn't in a blackout and you were in a blackout, usually you're in trouble. And when you say, what did I do? He's like, never mind, you don't want to know. So now you're going, nobody's talking to you, but they're not going to tell you what you did. So it's just not a lot of fun. And those are the kind of things that really began to get to me. And I couldn't stop. I'm not kidding. Once I got started on this, there was just no way of stopping. The only thing I could see to stop the pain, the psychological pain, the loneliness, the anguish, was to drink again. That's the only thing I lived for, was when it came around, when it was time. We didn't drink every day, we couldn't afford it, but whenever we could, as much as possible and as fast as possible, and just get out of the world. And that's all I cared about. So that was my whole focus. And as I said, it just got worse and worse. Well, at one point in time, Dick went off to TAD to New Mexico, I think it was, and I was left holding the fort down, which I didn't hold down too well. And I'd had a party over at the house, and decided that I needed, I guess it was the next morning, and I was a little hungover, and I decided I needed some more booze, so I went to get some out at the club. We were on the military base, and went out to the club to get more booze. But I hallucinated, I think. At that time, I didn't think it was hallucination, but anyhow, I saw this car coming up on me at least 173 miles an hour coming up behind me. And so in order to, get away from that car, I pulled off the road. Now, I'm sure there was a car coming, but I don't think it was coming like I thought it was coming. On the base in the middle of the day, okay? But at any rate, I thought that. Pulled off, and so I had this big old Chevrolet Biscayne station wagon, a great big old car, and I pulled into a ditch, all right? And so there is my car. I think there was only possibly one wheel that wasn't suspended in midair or knocked into the ditch. And I'm there because I'm just revving the car up. That's how clever you are when you're drunk. When you're full of an anesthesia and you're behind the wheel, I just keep revving up the car because I get this damn car out of the ditch and get onto the club and get me more to drink. That's what the whole point of the exercise is. And this fellow comes along, and he's an officer, and he said to me, "Can I help you?" Oh, I said, "Yes, you can." This car has gone off into the ditch, and I need some help getting it out. So he said, "Well, do you know anybody that could help you get the car out?" And I thought, well, yeah. I said, "I'll tell you what. When I need you, I'm on my way to the club." And so, listen, I know what's important. And I said, "I'm on my way to the club. So, if we could take me down to the club, went to get some stuff at the club. So he took me to the club, poor fella, and I got what I needed. And now he's driving me home, and he's wanting me to think about how, to get this car out of the ditch. I don't care. Okay? I got what I want. Call somebody who cares. Dick will be home in a couple of weeks. Meanwhile, I can get a ride. Back then I was good looking. So, I'll get a ride, no problem. But anyhow, I said to him, well, so do you want a beer? Oh, he said, don't you think you've had enough? That embarrassed me. It wasn't the first time somebody had asked me that. One time I was stumbling out of a restaurant, and somebody said, don't you think you had enough? And that embarrassed me. Oh, yeah, I'd had enough. But I just, kind of ditched him. I said, I've got it covered. I just thought of this really big guy that I knew. And I thought he can get the car out of the ditch. He's a big guy. It's a big car. So I called Joe and sent it. Joe wanted to do it. And I thought, I'm really sick of all of this. I'm sick of this whole business of trying to live like this. And so what I did was we had a bunch of pills in our house for the dog. We weren't pill takers. Those of you who got onto drugs, good for you, you thought ahead. But I didn't think ahead. I never thought ahead. I'll tell you how bad it was about me not thinking ahead. I always needed a Coke on the morning after the night before because I was just dried out, Horrible what alcohol do to your system. Had to have something to drink. I never had a Coke, because I never planned to get that drunk, ever. It's called loss of control. So anyhow, so I didn't have any pills in the house, nothing to ease me down. But I had antihistamines for the dog, and so I took all those and then continued to drink, and I still breathe really well, let me tell you. But the bad part was that when I fell backward, and then I lay there because everybody else was at a party. And so nobody found me for a while because my husband wasn't there. So I ended up in a coma for about 3 days when they finally found me and took me to the hospital and so forth. And I can tell you this, all I could think of was how angry I was that I was still alive. And I thought, you can't even do that right. What is the matter with you? You can't even leave the planet. I'd had enough. I was 28 years old, and I'd had enough. Now, I tell this story, but when I was 27, this was kind of coming up on me. I could feel the hot breath of destruction and mayhem on me. And so one day, we were Catholics, but we didn't really practice anything other than drinking much. So we had a Bible in the house in case God showed up and said, do you have a Bible in here? And we're like, oh yeah, wait at the door. I can wait, go find the Bible, dust it off, bring it out. See, yeah, I've got one. Didn't pray because it's better not to when you're living the way we were living because you want to keep a low profile. You don't want God to go, oh, there she is, So I didn't pray, didn't call attention to myself, stay under the radar. And, I realized it was getting really bad. So I had gone into the bathroom with the Bible so nobody would find me in there and think I was a religious fanatic, while I was reading the Bible. And I said, but I was serious, I said, at the age of 27, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this. I need some help. Help me. So I just opened the Bible. And I opened it, and some of you know this story. I opened it to be perfect even as my Heavenly Father is perfect. And I thought, wow, be perfect. So I stayed in that bathroom about an hour, really dealing with that. Could I come out of there and be perfect? And I thought to myself, okay, so if I'm perfect, what that then means is, if I come out of here perfect, then everything that I've done up to the age of 27 is erased. That's a pretty good deal, But then in my family, you live to be about 94, so that's not a really good deal, okay? I'm only 27. So I thought, well, tell you what, I'm just going to go ahead and do that because I don't have any choice. I said, okay, I'll be perfect. And I came out, and I felt high, a new high, a new awakening. I was going to be perfect. I felt wonderful. I came out of there just loving all of you, loving the world. Not any of you. I didn't know any of you people, but, I might have known you if you were out there still partying. Anyhow, just loving the world and wanting to do everything right. And the bad part about that, about being perfect, is that nobody else signs up to be perfect when you have signed up to be perfect. I don't know, for those of you who just newly got sober and you think you're going to go out home and, your family's going to appreciate you. No. Don't think anything that foolish. Now you're perfect and everybody's going to take advantage of your perfection. And that's what they did, of your sanctity. So, everybody wanted me to wait on them and do this and do that. And I'm smiling sweetly because I'm perfect. Remember, I got a lot of years to go. And I'm happy and I'm loving everybody. It lasted inside, where I'm liking you inside and outside. I don't know, about a week. And then I really resented having to be perfect while the rest of you didn't have to be perfect. So as a result, I got madder and madder inside. But I have a strong will. This is not a lack of will. This problem of alcoholism is not a lack of will. I have a strong will. And I lasted about 6 weeks. Matter and fire about how everybody, wanted me to do everything for them. Finally, I don't know, one night I was getting up to do something and Dick said, listen, while you're up, how about get me a cup of coffee? And I just attacked the poor man. Went on him like white on rice and called him every name except a nice person. And, how he just always took advantage of me, made me wait on him, da-da-da-da. Well, when I finished, just oral diarrhea all over the guy. So he says to me, listen, all I asked you was for a cup of coffee, you could have just said no. What are you, crazy? And I thought, I think I'm crazy. And I went back into the bathroom and said to God, I can't do this. The hell with you. The hell with life. I can't do this. And I walked away. And that's when I went down the tube. So by the age of 28, we find me tied down in a hospital bed from my 3-day coma, coming out of the coma, not knowing what to do. And I'll tell you, I wish I could say to you that was my wake-up call. That was not my wake-up call. I do know that it was my wake-up call to not keep doing that again because I had a little kid. And I thought, this is not right for this kid. So this was, I did my best. I didn't quit drinking, but I did my best to not kill myself for the next 4 years. It took me till I was 32. The lucky part of that for me is that my husband came into AA while he was in Vietnam or Japan. And he wrote me and told me about it and said, I'm sober. And by that time I had asked him for a divorce and I was planning on leaving him. And he goes, I got sober. And then all I can tell you that did for me was make me mad because I thought it was taking away my moral reason for being able to leave him. So as a result, I just, said it doesn't matter to me. I still want the divorce. He said, well, there's a program called Al-Anon, and you might want to try Al-Anon. And I said, what's that about? He said, well, it's for friends and family of alcoholics. I said, I don't have any friends or family that are alcoholics. I didn't love Dick anymore. I didn't care about him. I didn't want to be with him. And I said, and I don't join ladies' clubs, so I'm not going to Al-Anon. So when he came back, we didn't stay together. We were not together. We lived apart for a year. And Dick was about 4 months sober when he came home. We stayed together a couple of months, and then he left. And I fully expected him to get drunk. But you know what he did instead? He hung out with you people. Now, I'm back home drinking like a fish and still running the roads and still doing my thing. And I'm thinking that you all and Dick are conspiring against me, that y'all are talking about me, etc. I figure you got to be. And one night when, I had a girlfriend that came up to see me, I just knew that, that Dick was, during the time that we were together, I knew that he was going to call, he said, I think she might have a problem with alcohol. And I thought, you see it under every bush, buddy. So she and I went out and got drunk together because I wanted to cheer her up, I didn't want Dick calling her an alcoholic. We ended up getting home, and I'm drunk, and between the two of us, she was Portuguese and I was Irish, we were both drunk. We ran him out of the house, and he went and stayed with one of y'all. And I don't know if he talked about me or didn't talk about me. What I know is he came home that night, or the next morning rather, and I had gotten up off the couch where, that's where you go to bed, dressed in your best pajamas, which is whatever you wore the night before. That's what you're dressed in. And I didn't feel good, and he came in, and I thought, he's going to say something about me being drunk. And I'm going to say, it's your fault, because you accused the girl of being an alcoholic to cheer her up. I had to take her out to drink, da-da-da. It's all your fault. But he didn't. He took the wind out of my sails because he'd been around you all long enough not to get involved in my stuff. What he said to me is, "Hey, would you like a cup of coffee?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I thought to myself, I don't think I want to keep this up. I went over to, about 2 days later, Dick had his big AA party, the 24th of March. He had 2 years of sobriety. We moved back in when he had his first year. So there were like 75 people at the house. We had a wonderful time. Everybody remembered everything that everybody else had said, you know, all the jokes, which you don't do when you're having the other kind of party. Nobody left mad. It was all wonderful. And when he, that next morning when I really enjoyed the party, but the next morning I went over to a girlfriend of mine's house, and I used to go over to her house, once I was living with Dick, back living with him, and, have a few drinks when he was working or whenever he wasn't around. And she'd had a party at her house, but it was the old kind of party, where the whole place reeks of stale booze and cigarettes. And she came to the door, and she had this ratty old bathrobe. She was holding it closed, and she kind of shuffles to the door. Do you remember those days? Hung over, baby. And she says, "Come on in." And it's like 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning. She goes, "Come on in." And then she shuffles over to the refrigerator and opens it to take out a beer. And she goes, "You want one?" And there were times that I had turned down a beer with her because I had been going to some Al-Anon meetings once Dick and I moved back in. And I would say, "No, thank you." But I always wanted one. I just didn't want to go to the Al-Anon meeting and have y'all smell down my breath and ask me what I was doing. But this time I didn't want to. I thought, I don't want to live like this anymore. And I never had another drink. And like I said, that was a long time ago, March 24th of 1974. So when I began to immerse myself in this program of recovery, what I found was that there is a spiritual component here. This business of finding God really matters. I hear a lot of people tell me, "Oh, I don't know anything about this God stuff that have been around for a long, long time." And I think, why don't you know that? Why have you not asked? Why have you not sought? Why do you not look at the magic of this universe? It doesn't matter what you call God. It really doesn't. Alfie, Marianne, whatever the name you want. But there is magic in the universe. There is love in this universe. And what the principles of this program bring you to is that love, that practiced love. Where they say you need to get honest and you need to become teachable. Humility, everybody wants to make a big to-do about the word humility. It just means that you are teachable, that somebody can teach you something. Nobody could have taught me anything back when I was drinking. Didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to go your way. I was afraid you would have something, that would mess me up with how I was living my life. I wrote down those principles because, I'm old and I forget things. But what about hope? That's what brought me in here. I started going to some meetings, and here are these Marines, just tough old guys. And they are loving, and they're having a ball, and they're laughing, and they still knew how to party. I can remember going to my very first roundup down at John Yancey in Emerald Isle Beach, down there, Atlantic Beach, and just being amazed at these people who were dancing and partying, and they didn't have anything to drink, and laughing. It was just amazing to me. I just watched it in awe. And just said, I wonder if I'll ever be like that. I wonder if that'll ever happen to me. But the hope was, maybe it will. And when I got some sponsors, I had 2 sponsors, because some are sicker than others, and I kept both of them. Right along with each other. And Marge said to me, "Bonnie, you don't have to understand what we tell you to do here. You don't have to like what we tell you to do. Honey, you just have to do it if you want what we have." What I wanted was Marge's ability to truly and sincerely love people. I did not know how to do that, as I just read to you out of this book. I did not know how to connect to other people. I did not have that. I was immersed in aloneness. I was immersed in don't ask, I'm not going to tell. I was immersed in just being all by myself. And when I began to want to see, to see what those people had and to want what they had, and began to say to Marge, "Show me what to do," I began to follow directions because I wanted it. And over the years, I ended up working in the field of addictions. And when I was up at the hospital here, some of you knew a guy named Father Bob, I think, and I came to replace him. And he used to do this one lecture. And one of the lectures was that he would talk about what faith was. And he said faith is not the end, you don't start with having faith. You don't come into this program with having faith. Step 2 is came to believe, came to, and then came to believe. So he said what you start with is desperation. And I heard somebody last night in a meeting talking about the gift of desperation, that they had that gift of desperation. So he's saying, like, if you're up on the 8th floor of a building and you hear all this commotion out the window and you lean out and there are these firemen and they have those little things to catch you, they're that big, and they're like, go ahead and jump because we're practicing catching people. And, we want to be really good at this, so we just need, please go ahead. I mean, how many of us are going to jump? But they're doing that because there really is on fire and they don't want you to panic. Because when you go and you go to open the door, there's smoke under the door. So now you either jump and hope they catch you or you die. So that's what we do when we come here. You jump. And he said that's the beginning. Okay, desperation. And he said, and then, you have doubt. But what you begin to see is that other people say it. There's enough people, authority, that tells you that this really works, and they're working it, and they're staying sober. And initially, you may doubt that. You may go, oh, I bet when they get home, they're jerks to live with, or they're drinking or drugging or whatever. But you just keep seeing them. If you keep coming back and immersing yourself in this, and you see these people really are walking the talk. And so enough people say it exists that you begin to believe it. And if you begin to believe it, you decide you'll try it. And that's action. He said, then you actually take some action and you begin to do some different things. And anything that you do brings results. Anything you do. You can bring negative results by what you do or positive results by what you do. So anything. And that gives you experience. You have results, you have experience now. Anything you've done. I've got a lot of experience about being drunk, and you know what else I have a lot of experience now about being sober. So you have this experience, and that's what you have faith in, your own experience. So faith is the end result of desperation. But it begins with hope. It begins with you having hope that maybe you could get well too. And the faith is when you begin to, I say to anybody that I'm hanging out with, try it. Ask the power greater than yourself to reveal itself to you. Himself, herself, itself. It doesn't matter to me how you go about that, but ask love to reveal itself to you. Say, I want what they have. Show me. Show me that you're paying attention, that somebody in this universe is paying attention. And I will tell you what, you will get answers back. Direct answer to your prayers. And if you do that enough, if you immerse yourself in enough of this, and you walk these principles, you will have an experience of some God that loves you. That's what will happen. Now that's worth hanging out for, because that's a high that you can't get with booze. I can remember going to parties when I first started drinking, and everybody seemed so nurturing and nice and, like warm and fuzzy. And the next day you see them out in the grocery store or something, they hardly know you because it's BS. It's not real. This is real. And when you immerse yourself in it and you begin to immerse yourself with these people, you find out it is real. And the courage is to not pick up the drink the next time some stuff hits the fan. That's courage, okay? Even though you want to, even though you're frightened, to be able to call your sponsor. And I can tell you there have been times in my life when I had to have courage, and I can remember driving up to Rosemary Dunford's, who lived on the Outer Banks, after my husband walked out on me and my mother was dying of cancer and living with me. I was thinking to myself, just get me to Rosie's, because I thought the only thing I could think of right then was right back to my old suicide pattern. I wanted to die. I wanted to drive into a ditch, but this time on purpose. And I said, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Get to Rosie's. Once you can talk to Rosie, you're going to be all right. Just get to Rosie's. And I had a Bible with me, because the people that immersed me initially were people who were Christian, who walked this walk, and who were in this program. So I had read the Bible, and I'm one that, underlines things and puts stuff up in the margins and everything. And I'm like, God, I just need some help here. I don't know what to do. And I flipped open the Bible, which is on the seat next to me, and it was in big orange letters at the top of the page that I had written for some reason, for some other thing, was don't give up. That summed up that page. And that got me to Rosemary's. And I lived through it. I've lived through a lot of stuff. But I've also lived through a lot of joy, because that's why I hang around. All of you who know me know that that's what I talk about. It's about joy. So the faith, that you get is the beginning of getting to know yourself. What I want to do and why I'm sober is not just to live around and be sober and go to meetings. I go to meetings to stay sober so I can live. I'm not living to be sober. I'm sober so I can live. And so what I want to do is find out who I am, which you can only do through hanging out with yourself, and not giving yourself some amount of anesthesia every time you stand up and you say something. Or every time you say you're scared and you're like, never mind, glug, glug, glug. Don't worry about it, just shut up, go sit down. Like I said to the dog, go sit. That's what I was doing with myself. So if you don't do that, if you keep on saying to yourself, tell me about it. If you go to people and they say, tell me about it, and you begin to process what's going on with you and get to know yourself, then the whole point of this, remember, we said it started here, is to create the life that you want. One of the things that I had happen to me when I was a little girl, I was out, was about 11 years old, and I was waiting for a bus coming home from a movie that I'd met with some other kids downtown. And I was by myself waiting for the bus, and there were some other little kids there with their parents. And the parents were talking to the kids and saying, oh, when we get home, we're going to have this for dinner and, do all this stuff. And I knew I was going home to a dark, empty house, and there wasn't any home. There had never been a home there. And so, what I felt was, gosh, I wish I could go live with them. Maybe I could have a good life. And then, I thought, no, I don't think you'll ever get away from her. I don't think she'll ever let you get away from her. I think it's hopeless for you. Your life will always be like this. And at 11 years old, I gave up. Just put my head between my shoulders and gave up. After I was sober and I was in a meditation, I never thought about that again. But in this meditation, it was like God showed up to me and said, do you remember that little girl that was sitting on the bench and she gave up and said life will never be good for her? He said, your job is to go in front of her right now, invisibly, as an adult, and say to her, just you wait until you grow up, and I'm going to make sure every good thing happens to you. And it's your job. That's what your job is. That's your purpose. After that whole thing about being perfect, I learned that if the translation of perfect through the Baptist minister, who is a biblical scholar, Charles Stanley, some of you probably heard of him, said the word perfect came from the word teleos, and what it really meant was fulfill your purpose, even as my Heavenly Father fulfilled his. So that misreading of the text back in the day that put me out on the street and almost dead was mistranslated. And what it really means is fulfill your purpose. Now, it wouldn't have done me much good back then anyhow, because I wouldn't have known what my purpose was. But when I came in here, you know what they do? One of the first things they do for you is they hand out purposes. You've been issued a purpose. Your primary purpose is stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. You have a purpose. And I'm going to tell you something. If you do that, you'll be happy. One of the things they found about happiness was that 40% of happiness is external. Okay? External in the sense of not money, power, and fame, but external in the practice that you have of being compassionate and being connected, okay, and being loving. That brings you happiness. 40% of your happiness is dependent on you practicing that. And you've been given 12 steps to practice that with, which is just amazing to me. I think that's amazing. I could tell you, I don't have time, I could tell you a bunch of things that have happened that were wonderful, that, specific things. But I think, when you're thinking about miracles and you're wondering about, are there any, the most recent guy that had something to say, Edison, when he died, sat up just before he died. and said, "Oh, it's beautiful over there." But recently, Steve Jobs did the same thing. He went, "Wow, wow." Now, don't you want to know what that is? That's from hanging out with love, and you just begin to experience that stuff on the very, very, same side as you of the world. What I do and what I try to do with my life is to practice love. That means that I'm not good at it if I have to practice it, right? You get a little bit better at it all the time. But it means that you always practice it and that you want that. And the big place you want to practice that is on the inside. What are you really thinking about people? What are you really thinking about yourself? That's the big place to practice it. And when you're saying to yourself, "Why are you sober?" and you say, "I don't know, I'm newly sober, I'm just getting sober," that's good. My sponsor used to say, "Bonnie, all you have to do is breathe in and breathe out and don't drink this year. That's all you got to do. And the rest will come." And the rest does come. So you all know from last Sunday that I really like this guy, Hafiz, who's a poet. And I'm going to end with one of his poems. He's from the 13th century, lived in the 1200s. But I think he talks about stuff just like it hasn't changed any. So this is his poem called "Cast All Your Votes for Dancing." He said, "I know the voice of depression still calls you. I know those habits that can ruin your life still send their invitations. But you are with a friend, that's who he calls God. You are with a friend now and look so much stronger. You can stay that way and even bloom. Keep squeezing drops of sun from your prayers and your work and your music, and from your companions' beautiful laughter." This is the best place in the world, come and laugh, is it not? "Keep squeezing drops of sun from the sacred hands and glance of your beloved," another word for God, "and my dear, from the most insignificant movements of your own holy body. Learn to recognize the counterfeit coins that may buy you just a moment of pleasure, but then drag you for days like a broken man behind a farting camel. You are with the friend now. Learn what actions of yours delight him, what actions of yours bring freedom, which is I'm all about freedom, and love. Whenever you say God's name, dear pilgrim, my ears wish my head was missing so they could finally kiss each other and applaud all your nourishing wisdom. Oh, keep squeezing drops of the sun from your prayers and your work and your music and from your companions' beautiful laughter and from the most insignificant movements of your own holy body. Now, sweet one, be wise and cast all your votes for dancing. I hope you do.